Okay.
Okay.
Let's go for it, John.
Let's spend a minute just centering ourselves and being present to this moment. You can close your eyes if you like and take a few deep breaths. And just feel into our collective energy, along with those who are not able to be here from our team. And being aware that there is a huge gathering of humanity supporting us and awaiting what we are creating. And hear these words. Take these words in to your body, mind, and spirit. In the creation of my lasting health, I become whole. And through the collective expression of our wholeness, together, we realize the full potential of humanity. Feel that sink into every cell in your body, so that together we can live it. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming together for this shared purpose on a Sunday evening.
What time is your event?
My phone is going crazy with texts from Florence. I have something I'd like you to watch right off the top. It's a short TED Talk.
Yeah.
Some of you may be familiar with it.
Right. It all got working. I don't know what it was.
Good. Now let me know if you can hear this.
No, nothing.
Could you hear it?
No. No sound.
We could see it moving.
Why no sound?
Is the sound up, John, on the...
Oh, I know. You're going to have to take... Here we go.
Called the Marshmallow Challenge. And the idea is pretty simple. Teams of 4 have to build the tallest freestanding structure out of 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string, and a marshmallow. The marshmallow has to be on top. And though it seems really simple, it's actually pretty hard because it forces people to collaborate very quickly. And so I thought this was an interesting idea, and I incorporated it into a design workshop, and it was a huge success. And since then, I've conducted about 70 design workshops across the world with students and designers and architects, even the CTOs of the Fortune 50. And there's something about this exercise that reveals very deep lessons about the nature of collaboration, and I'd like to share some of them with you. So Normally, most people begin by orienting themselves to the task. They talk about it, they figure out what it's going to look like, they jockey for power, then they spend some time planning, organizing, they sketch in, they lay out spaghetti. They spend the majority of their time assembling the sticks into ever-growing structures, and then finally, just as they're running out of time, someone takes out the marshmallow, and then they gingerly put it on top, and they stand back and ta-da! They admire their work. But what really happens most of the time is that the ta-da turns into an uh-oh, because the weight of the marshmallow causes the entire structure to buckle and to collapse. So there are a number of people who have a lot more uh-oh moments than others. And among the worst are recent graduates of business school. It's amazing. They lie, they cheat, they get distracted, and they produce really lame structures. And of course, there's teams that have a lot more ta-da structures. And among the best are recent graduates of kindergarten. And it's pretty amazing, as Peter tells us. Not only do they produce the tallest structures, but they're the most interesting structures of them all. So the question you want to ask is, how come? Why? What is it about them? And Peter likes to say that none of the kids spend any time trying to be CEO of Spaghetti Inc., right? They don't spend time jockeying for power. But there's another reason as well. And the reason is that business students are trained to find the single right plan, right? And then they execute on it. And then what happens is when they put the marshmallow on top, they run out of time. And what happens? It's a crisis. Sound familiar, right? Okay, what kindergartners do differently is that they start with the marshmallow and they build prototypes, successive prototypes, always keeping the marshmallow on top. So they have multiple times to fix and they build prototypes along the way. So designers recognize this type of collaboration as the essence of the iterative process. And with each version, kids get instant feedback about what works and what doesn't work. So the capacity to play and prototype is really essential. But let's look at how different teams perform. So the average for most people is around 20 inches. Business school students, about half of that. Lawyers, a little better, but not much better than that. Kindergarten, better than most adults. Who does the very best? Architects and engineers, thankfully. And 39 inches is the tallest structure I've seen. And why is it? Because they understand triangles and self-reinforcing geometrical patterns are the key to building self-reinforced stable structures. So CEOs, a little bit better than average, but here's where it gets interesting. If you put an executive admin on the team, they get significantly better. It's incredible. You know, you look around, you go, oh, that team's going to win. You can just tell beforehand. And why is that? Because they have special skills of facilitation. They manage the process. They understand the process. And any team who manages and pays the close attention to work will significantly improve the team's performance. Specialized skills and facilitation skills, the combination leads to strong success. If you have 10 teams that typically perform, you'll get maybe 6 or so that have standing structures. And I tried something interesting. I thought, let's up the ante once. So I offered a $10,000 prize of software to the winning team. So what do you think happened to these design students? What was the result? Here's what happened.
Wow.
Not one team had a standing structure. Not one had, if anyone had built, say, a 1-inch structure, they would have taken home the prize. So isn't it interesting that high stakes have a strong impact? We did the exercise again with the same students. What do you think happened then? So now they understand the value of prototyping. So the same team went from being the very worst to being among the very best. They produced the tallest structures in the least amount of time. So there's deep lessons for us about the nature of incentives and success. So you might ask, why would anyone actually spend time running a marshmallow challenge? And the reason is I help create digital tools and processes to help teams build cars and video games and visual effects. And what the Marshmallow Challenge does is it helps them identify the hidden assumptions. Because frankly, every project has its own marshmallow, doesn't it? The challenge provides a shared experience, a common language, a common stance to build the right prototype. And so this is the value of the experience of this so simple exercise. And those of you who are interested may want to go to marshmallowchallenge.com. It's a blog that you can look at how to build the marshmallows, or step-by-step instructions on this. There are crazy examples from around the world of how people tweak and adjust the system. There's world records that are on this as well. And the fundamental lesson, I believe, is that design truly is a contact sport. It demands that we bring all of our senses to the task and that we apply the very best of our thinking, our feeling, and our doing to the challenge that we have at hand. And sometimes a little prototype of this experience is all that it takes to turn us from an uh-oh moment to a ta-da moment, and that can make a big difference. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Hi. What did you find most important for us in that message?
Well, I really like the idea of lots of prototypes. In other words, keep making new ideas and taking the best and continuing to improve on the process.
Mm-hmm. Like the kindergarten kids.
Mm.
Yeah, like there's no mistakes. There's prototype, and there's okay. Let's, it's a opportunity to just build newly again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing here with the development and trying out ideas. And at a certain point, we're going to be launching the program, but we're going to continue this development process as we do it, because we're going to continue to iterate new ideas and integrate them as we go. There's a kind of dynamic energy to it that some of us, including myself, have to be able to shift out of the desired the nature to get something right and perfect before it gets put into use. Anything else from anyone?
Well, the fact that the groups with incentive produce nothing, I think, is very typical, very telling of, you pump yourself up and then you extra think you need to find the good answer, the good solution, and having the freedom to not be that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing I would say is that I've tried, and those spaghetti don't work like at all. I'll try.
Did you just do that, David? You ran off and got some spaghetti and some tape?
I don't have a marshmallow. I don't believe in them, so I have a blender.
That's a real challenge. Tangerine. Okay.
So having the right raw materials is critical.
True, yes. Another good one. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
I like that, Jillian,
Yeah, I like that. And I just think the team of one also doesn't work. As wonderful as you are, David.
Yeah.
I'll pass you spaghetti.
I like that the kids were doing so well. Like the graduating from kindergarten. It's like that child brain being just so advanced, and where do we lose it along the way, right?
Yeah. And how do we bring it back in when we've lost it?
Yeah. And powder skiing would help.
Yes. And I think we need to keep asking that question as we create the Lasting Health Program, because everybody wants to bring that part of them back. and it's needed for what everybody wants to create in terms of their own lasting health. Bring those elements that have been lost back into their wholeness.
Or rehabilitate them, because often they were lost because of a significant trauma, right? So
Yes.
really bring that that opportunity back, of being innately open.
Yeah. Jillian, I think we're experiencing the volume booster in your mic again. Are you? No, it's not. You're muted.
I think it's on yours, John.
Is it mine? Here, let me mute and see. No.
Is it mine? Let me mute here.
There it is. That's it.
It's yours.
Yeah. Come back, Leni. So you keep it muted. You keep it muted when you're not talking. Okay. All right. So let's dive into the next step. I'm going to present to you what I discovered from all the outcomes that everyone contributed, and from the analysis that I did of them. And I'm excited to show you what this is, what's happened. And so I'd really like to thank you and thank all the others who are not on this call that contributed, because I think there's something quite powerful in stating what we want for ourselves in lasting health. To be able to put words to those things that we want for ourselves begins an unfolding of support from all kinds of avenues and places to assist us in realizing our full potential through our lasting health. And so now I'd like to share with you what I gleaned. When I looked at how the outcomes break down, I was really delighted to see that. Oh, and everybody, if you have a question or want to comment about what I'm saying, this is going to take 10, 15 minutes or so probably, but just jump in and interrupt. I was delighted to see when I looked at the outcomes that they broke down roughly into 1/3 body, 1/3 mind, and 1/3 spirit. And it's not quite that simple. You have to read into it a little bit, and I think you'll see what I mean when I show you an example. What I found was that there was a predominance of body, just physical things that people would like to see shift for them or heal. But many of those were not simply looking at the body. They were presented more fully, such that I would say they lean towards body-mind or body-spirit or body-mind and spirit. And when I looked at those figures, that's when I could see very clearly that basically the weight is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, body, mind, and spirit. And that really validates the idea that we've had so far, and can guide us in the way in which we approach developing the program, knowing that outcome generally is what most people who will be participating in the Lasting Health program will want. I want to use an example here, and it's the very first one at the top of the list that came in. And it was Jillian's, the one she put first, and Jillian's outcomes came in first. And she stated that outcome as freedom from weight. And I found that really curious and interesting, and partly because it contrasted, there were 3 other mentions of weight, one of them mine, that were basically in the realm of achieving an ideal weight, which you can see is a little bit different. Achieving an ideal weight is a little bit different than wanting freedom from weight. I suspect that the approach to the others that are stating it simply as an achievement of an ideal may enjoy the approach that we're going to take with Jillian's, even though they didn't say it in quite the same way. But that'll be up to each of us to see after we go through this process, just what the nature of our outcomes, as we've stated, map on to the outcomes that I've given as examples of the program, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So just let me explain a little bit about and Jillian, please jump in, because I'm going to come up with some wording for a shift in that, and I'll show you what that means. So freedom of expression is not just an expression of the body. I'm thinking. To me, it also expresses an emotional and a psychological and a spiritual aspect of one's way of being. And it has broad context and is potentially already quite deeply held for the participant. It's a desire that points to the participant's concept of body image, self-acceptance, cultural awareness, as well as somatic and emotional levels of development. And so I would place it in the realm of the Trinity of body, mind, and spirit equally. Which points to a very achievable outcome within the Lasting Health Program when it is expressed as a developmental objective. And here I wish to emphasize that one of the key distinctions that we're making about the Lasting Health Program is that lasting health is a developmental process. We don't simply acquire the knowledge or the know-how and skills to have lasting health. We grow into it and we become whole throughout our lives. So it's a continuous process. Nevertheless, when we approach our own well-being, we set ourselves goals and we want to achieve them. And anyone who comes into the program is going to want that too. And that's entirely possible within the right language. So secondly, I'd like to emphasize that the program will have 2 kinds of outcomes. There's general outcomes that we would expect that everybody coming through the program will achieve and realize for all participants. And then there are individualized outcomes. So let's create an individualized outcome for Jillian, and then look at it mapped to the general outcomes of the program. So in order to do this, freedom from weight needs to first be translated. The process of translating outcomes into developmental objectives is, by design of the program, I'm saying, is collaborative and co-creative between the participant and the program. Or I'm thinking that it would happen within a coaching program led by the coach. But also I'd like to explore the possibility of participants self-generating outcomes as developmental objectives after we go through an immersive intake process in which they begin to learn about making distinctions about their own healing process. And that alone is a very important skill in one's lasting health toolbox and would be a generalized outcome, or likely a combination of outcomes for every participant in the program. And again, I think you'll see more clearly what I'm pointing at when we look at the specific outcomes that I've put onto the mind map. So here's an example of the kind of language that takes a participant's desired outcome and shapes it to be an achievable objective of the program. Freedom from weight. Here it is as a developmental objective. To develop, and Jillian, listen, and then we'll have a conversation about this, okay? To develop a greater capacity to compassionately value, care for, and accept my body as an expression of my truest self. Can you comment on that, Jillian?
Yeah. I like that. Could you say it again, please?
To develop a greater capacity to compassionately value, care for, and accept my body as an expression of my truest self.
Yeah.
Can you see how freedom from weight would come from that?
Totally. Yeah.
And does that feel right to you, that it is about your body, mind, and spirit, about your emotional world and your psychological world?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when we start from an outcome, like you stated, freedom from weight, and we translate it into a developmental objective, we then break it down into a number of muscles, each of which would be considered a skill or a piece of knowledge or an attitudinal shift that would contribute to the realization of the developmental objective. And in that sense, freedom from weight becomes a number of outcomes. Mm. Now let's, I want to go now to the mind map and to show you those generalized outcomes, the ones that we will be saying we want everyone who goes through this program to be able to achieve these. But I want to go through a step before that. So let's just leave this developmental objective for a moment. And I'll go to the mind map, and I want to show you some other ideas that came out of the analysis of the outcomes. The first one being a desire to lay out some of the qualities that I think we are pointing to that the Lasting Health Program will have. And in addition to the ones that Richard and Jillian put out for the Sentinel as a whole, I think I'd like you to look at these words and see if they resonate. I think they will, and see that they guide us, and see if we want to add to them. So there they are, right there. Can you see those qualities of the Lasting Health Program?
Yeah.
accessible and simple, joyful, creative, individualized, collaborative, experiential, integrative, effective, measurable, developmental, dynamic, and responsive. We may put these aside, or we may decide to boil them down to a few. We may decide to add to them, but I just wanted to share them with you because they came out of the process of looking at outcomes. When I looked at the outcomes of, okay, well, generally, how do we want to hold this, and what kind of an experience do we want to give the participant in order to be able to have those outcomes? Does anyone want to comment on this, or can I move on to the next step? Okay. All right. So now I want you to look at how I boiled down the outcomes, went back and looked at what we'd laid out previously in terms of the content of the program. And then I created 5 streams. Program content fundamentals. These are consecutive and integrated streams. I don't know what to call them. They're not modules because they're integrated. So they don't stand alone. I'll show them to you here. Can you see that okay? The first one is body. And within body, we have movement technologies and practices, somatic reset, personalized diet, detox as lifestyle, gut-brain health, body awareness, which includes such simple things as the ability to track symptoms. In the mind fundamental of content of the program, we have mindful intelligence, mediation, subject-object understanding, which if you've never heard about that, I think you'll understand it when I explain it a little bit later, because it works really well to shift people out of their subjective sense of themselves. Learning to learn practices, neurogenerative therapies and practices. And then in spirit, connection to natural world, energy work, and soul expression. The 4th fundamental I've labeled life flow. And in it includes life and healing narrative, conscious aging, purpose, service, health leadership, lifestyle integration, trauma release therapies and practices. And the 5th fundamental is community. And within community, we have relationship and interpersonal skills, building circles of support, system navigation and communication, and caregiving and care receiving. Does anyone have a comment or question about that, about these 5 fundamentals?
Yeah, John, I find it very complete. It's really nice to see this because in clinic I just see some of those covered. This is awesome. Very, very, very thoroughly put together. Thank you.
Great, and recognize that this is on the mind map, and it is to be massaged and looked at and reflected upon. But it is the culmination of what we've been talking about to date, including, as I mentioned, analyzing and synthesizing the list of 150 outcomes that we created. So would anyone else like to ask a question or say something before we go to outcomes?
John, I'm just trying to read some of the other stuff that you have connected to those main concepts.
That's where we're going.
Okay, because your Zoom Pro account box is blocking that. You might want to minimize that.
Yeah, I just wanted you to see these boxes: life flow, community, spirit, mind and body.
Okay.
For now. Okay, so now what I've put on to these boxes is examples of 2 or 3 generalized outcomes that we would be supporting every participant in the program to achieve. Okay, now what I want to go back to, Jillian, I want to go back to you and your freedom from weight outcome that you desire, and the translating of that into a developmental objective. So if we remember what that is, to develop a greater capacity to compassionately value, care for, and accept my body as an expression of my truest self. Now let's look at the outcomes within each of the 5 modules, and I will speak to your developmental objective as we do that. So, under body, you'll see at the top there, learn to objectively and accurately observe, assess, and track variable symptoms over time. When I think of your developmental objective, Jillian, I can see that the attention that you pay through developing this skill to be objective and accurately observe, assess, and track variable symptoms over time also allows you a view of your body from a slightly different perspective than you normally take as a pattern of your thoughts and beliefs about who you are. Would you say that might be true?
Yeah, I'm nodding yes, I think that's completely true. I have my own version of myself through my lens of whatever my authentic self wants to criticize and project. And so that's not what you're talking about here.
And so you can see how this may support the achievement of that developmental objective.
Yeah.
In a small way, we don't know how meaningful this one would be to you. It might be, we'd have to see what happens when you begin to do this tracking and what other things come up. So let's go to the next one. Under body. Develop a personalized diet through increased knowledge of food as medicine, awareness of interrelationship of gut and brain, and skillful experimentation. Can you see how this developing this ability may contribute to the achievement of your developmental objective?
Sure.
Your relationship with food is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Your relationship with how you connect food with body, food with weight, food with your emotional world is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
There may be some actual shifts in your metabolism based on that. We don't know. But your awareness of the interrelationship of gut and brain and being able to open up to experimentation holds the possibility of leading to you, of contributing to you achieving freedom from weight, or the developmental objective that's based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go to mind. Improvements in mindful attention to internal mental and physical processes. Does that contribute, Jillian?
I'm sure it does. I mean, a part of what as we're going through this, what I'm thinking, I mean, I have liberated myself over the years, from 63 of them now, to where I'm at now, which wasn't where I started, and still there's more to go. But what I've discovered more recently is the freedom actually comes from, this is really an interesting conversation. I felt the freedom has come from not focusing so much on everything, but just learning to love myself. And do you remember What the Bleep, like 20 years ago,
yes.
with
Yeah.
the girl, what's her name, the deaf woman looking in the mirror and hating herself, and finally she loves herself. And that's made a huge difference. I work on that internally with myself. So I'm almost a little concerned about getting into like watching what I eat and everything else. I mean, I know it's important for health, but I also don't want to get back into the mind spiral of what comes up for me then is depriving myself, or that what I've got right now isn't okay, and I have to, it feels like an awful lot of attention on the wrong thing, where I really just want to love myself as I am right now. And then I think things flow in a different way with eating properly and all the rest of it. I don't know how that lands, but that's what my brain is saying.
Yeah. So your internal dialogue for yourself.
Yeah.
Around food.
Yeah.
Embodying.
Food is all of this is true. So to be quite honest, I get into wood for trees on this issue. And so, I mean, food for me has been the enemy from a very, very early age. And I'm suspicious of eating food. And it's not until somebody said to me last January, no wonder you're dizzy, Jillian, you don't eat enough. It's like, oh, and so I actually started to eat more food, and I've actually, I'm happier with my body than I've ever been. So all I can tell you is things like that. To analyze myself is actually almost impossible for me to do because of that.
Then let's speak to these as generalized outcomes.
Yeah.
Would a generalized outcome like this within a lasting health program hold you back from achieving your developmental objective?
I actually don't know how to, I don't know. Because a part of me doesn't want to make it pathological. I think that's what it is. And I have a similar internal dialogue as there's always something wrong with me. And so, I could get really into thinking I have to do these things because, there's something wrong with me, in which case that they will get in the way. So it's all about my internal dialogue. Yeah.
It looks like the next two paragraphs speak to what we're talking about there, John.
develop social cognitive abilities such as insight into the nature of the mind and self, and also the ability to assume the perspective of others.
And the next,
Yeah, maybe that's where to start.
and the next one there.
Learn constructive ways of dealing with difficult emotions, cultivating pro-social motivations and positive emotions such as compassion and empathy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's just the order.
Yeah. And like the second one there strikes me as the perspective of others. I remember a conversation between you and Richard where we were talking about this.
Oh God, we shouldn't have had him live with us for 6 weeks, Richard. Okay.
And if you could see, when one is able to see oneself through the eyes of another, knowing that what that person sees is not what you experience of what you feel.
Yeah.
So that contributes to self-love, like you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm concerned about in your response to the first one there, and is like we would not be sitting down with a participant. This is going on behind the scenes, right? We're not sitting down with them and saying, you need to improve your mindful attention and internal mental and physical processes in order to have freedom from weight.
Good. Good.
It would be
Why wouldn't we be doing that?
Well, if it applied to the person, it would. But in a coaching conversation, you're going to find the place that is most important. And what you just said about self-love would come right out at the point that you are actually creating the developmental objective. Mm-hmm. And that developmental objective would probably have those words in it.
Mm. Yeah.
And then as you go through the program and you're doing mindful intelligence practices that support the development of these three outcomes on the right-hand side, along with many others, this is just an example of them, you're going to be in the process of doing it, but you're not going to be in the process of every day checking to see, have I developed a socio-cognitive ability beyond what I had yesterday?
No.
Have I thought myself into a corner around my freedom from weight? You're not going to be bringing that kind of attention. But when we map these out and we all look at them and we go, well, is that, improvements in mindful attention to internal mental and physical processes something that we want everybody to achieve or not? I don't think that alone is going to hurt you or get in the way of your achievement of that objective. My desire in going through these one by one is more to show that there is a connection between every one of these and what you want to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Got that. Mm-hmm.
And reminding ourselves of what John started the session with, it's important to keep remembering this is just about building a couple of prototypes, see if the marshmallow can stand at the top. We'll build another one at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what you brought up, Jillian, it reminds me of that importance that we have within this system of co-creation. So if somebody says, well, I've already done it, and this is what works about what I've done, or this is what doesn't work about what I've done, then we integrate that into this whole process, right? Because people are not coming to us as, clear tablets. They're coming to us with all sorts of stuff. What John is saying, and I agree with him, the idea that generally speaking, would mindful attention to one's internal mental and physical processes be a useful thing to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more like how you've used that in the past, and maybe you've used it in a way that hasn't, well, obviously hasn't supported you.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's other ways to use that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You want, and what I heard is you want to use it to love yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where the coaching is. That's where it is.
And that's the last outcome that you stated, is to love myself all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go down to spirit now.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So here are 2 outcomes for spirit. The ability to identify the difference between pain and suffering and grow the capacity to release oneself from suffering. And secondly, understand the nature of energy within all life. Develop greater sensitivity to its role in health and illness, and learn skillful ways to attune to energy. Can you see how those support you in your developmental objective, Jillian?
No, I'm not. No, because I'm not really getting what they mean. So,
okay, the ability to identify the difference between pain and suffering, and grow the capacity to release oneself from suffering.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm clear about that. That's my mind state. Okay.
And you want freedom.
Yeah.
You want freedom from the suffering of being confined by your weight, confined by your ideas, confined by.
It's really my ideas.
Yeah.
My thinking that I want the freedom from around body.
And does that create suffering?
Oh yeah.
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 So to learn to be able to distinguish between, say, the pain of my view of myself and then getting the suffering of being stuck in that, as opposed to allowing it to flow through.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The next one, understand the nature of energy within all life and develop greater sensitivity to its role in health and illness, and learn skillful ways to attune to energy.
Yeah, I don't exactly know what that means. I mean, it sounds great. I just don't know what.
Okay. Can you imagine that your attention to the energetic, with the energy of your body, could be greater. Your attunement to it could be greater than it is.
I think that's totally true. I want to control it and have it be different. So I maybe don't even know what it is. Yeah.
Okay. So then your attention to the physical, in contrast to the energetic, that ratio can shift such that your attention to the energetic grows and your attention to the physical diminishes.
I see. That would be great.
Lessening the confinement of your attention within the physical.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great thing to have. Yeah.
Anyone else want to comment on this? Jump in, or shall I continue?
I think you should continue. This is good.
Life flow. I've put 4 down here, but there's no meaning to I just wanted to get a few out there and see what happened. The first one is learn to understand, express, and commit to one's unique version of lasting health. Does your unique version of lasting health, Jillian, include freedom from?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can understand that for yourself and be able to express it and commit to it, you are self-generating the freedom.
I think the ability to articulate and express it, to develop a narrative around it, I think would be really important, because I don't have one. So yeah, and word creates our world, as we know from our training. And so, yeah, that's very interesting just to get that. And when I talk to people about developing our lasting health program, I don't say very much about it, apart from saying it's a concept that most people don't think is possible, including Gillian, and that's about it. And we're exploring it and developing, and it's fine. But really, I have no idea really what that is for myself, and so that would be a big piece.
Yeah.
To actually create it, because I have no idea what it is and how to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you see this from everything that we've talked about as a possibility for you? Learn to understand, express, and commit to one's unique version of lasting health. Can you see that as an outcome for yourself?
Yes, for sure.
Great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just got distracted. Is that your low battery? Yeah.
That's my low battery. I'm just going to plug my computer in.
Yeah,
So give me
not mine. Okay. Yeah.
Back in a sec.
Yeah, I can see that actually. That's a real blind spot that this has just uncovered. That's very cool.
Jillian, it's kind of cool, because I was thinking all along on that whole spiritual subject and understanding nature, like Chinese medicine with meridian theory. That's what this is all about, right? It's like we are a microcosm of a macrocosm. So the way energy flows around us is pretty much how it flows within us, right? And then the tools, acupuncture, gua sha, tuina, all these techniques or herbs, they're just in a way supporting that microcosm within the macrocosm. So it's kind of like, that's when, like John was saying, you're all of a sudden balancing the body and the energy. So it becomes this yang over yin, or yin over yang, the Tai Chi symbol, right? That's what this is all about, in a sense. So great healing opportunity.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting.
Totally. Super exciting.
Okay. I'm plugged in. The next one is learn to take the lead in one's own health and well-being. And if you go, if you come back over to the life flow and see what the contents are there: life and healing narrative, conscious aging, purpose, service, health leadership, lifestyle, integration, trauma release, therapies and practices. Can you imagine that you would, through that process, learn to take the lead?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And we can stretch that out and talk about it in many different ways. There's other outcomes that follow from that.
Yeah.
The third one here is create a comprehensive life book, including life chronology, healing narratives, declarations and intentions, learning objectives, health records, practices, creative expressions. I have this vision of everybody that goes through the program building this book for themselves that is both a way of delivering material, us delivering to them, and a way of them organizing it, and a way of them adding to it, and a way of them collecting their experiences and their thoughts, and as I say, make declarations and intentions for themselves, so that they're voicing them to themselves and to the world, gathering up all the things that have happened to them in their life in terms of potential traumas. Often this process, when you go through the chronology, And you look at, oh, well, I did this year, and then this happened, and then this, and then there was a big event in this year, and that was, 43 years ago. And when you spend a bit of time with it, it's amazing how the thought pops up. Oh, I forgot what happened in between those two times, and you add something to it, and it ends up growing, and you end up connecting with the flow of your life in a new way that gives you access to some of the information that you haven't had access to, and and thereby stood in the way of you developing the skills and knowledge and way of being within yourself that you are desiring.
Mm.
John, as I'm looking at this, I'm going, this whole thing is an app that you've developed here. It's it's all laid out, and I'm sure there's lots of other pieces to go in there, but if I was opening this up and I could write in exactly that, what's my health today, how do I look at it, what's my way of being with my health, what are my daily activities, my daily intakes, and if I could open that up on my screen, and it would be right there. You just said a journal or booklet, and it's fantastic.
Great.
Cool.
Can I just say one thing to Jillian?
Yes, Marcia.
Richard, that was great, by the way. And John, this is a beautiful piece of work you've put together here with everyone's input, of course, but it's really great. Jillian, you said that under the spiritual, that you uncovered a blind spot that was really important. I just would like for you to repeat in your own words what that blind spot that you uncovered is and what's there now.
Yeah, I've forgotten it already. Thanks, Marcia. So it's about this notion of lasting health, and up until this very moment, it's been purely conceptual and academic to me, because we've been talking about a program, right? We're developing for others, and now all of a sudden we're talking about one of my health outcomes. And I realized that, and John says, and I echo what John says when I'm talking to other people, most people don't have an idea that there's such a thing as lasting health. Well, I'm top of that list, and I have no idea how to put it into words, because it doesn't actually exist in my consciousness as a possibility. So this, therefore, that's the piece I got, that no wonder, it seems very conceptual to me, because I have no idea, and have not up until this moment realized that it is something that's possible, that I could achieve it, and that means to see what that means to me and put words to it. And I just haven't applied it to myself before. So how could I bring it into the world if I have no way of articulating any kind of narrative about it at all? It's just been an idea for others, and now it's like, whoa, this is something I'm working on for myself. That's pretty cool.
Got it. Great. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Richard, I was just thinking about your comment about the app there. And I see a lot of pathology where there's a lot of analysis in people's life. And that is good, of course. But what I see also is sometimes there is a missing link of the feeling, of the integration of where we are between heaven and earth. That's how we say it in Chinese medicine, where there's also needs to be some sort of an additional component that allows people to feel and really go inward rather than to measure all the time with an app, for example. Because it seems like the world is like so vast in regards to the way our brain is working, and we're forgetting that heart-opening aspect of how do I feel, right? And an app can't really give you that. And so it would be nice to really also, and I mentioned with the program that we are developing, that's a huge component as well. But I just needed to say that.
Yeah, that would be great, Leni. That was fantastic. And there's just when you're talking about it, then I could see ways that, well, how this is where my mind goes. It goes, okay, and we could have a piece in there that, have you done your 15 minutes of meditation today and been mindful of, and felt your body, your stomach, your liver, your heart, your head, and noted those things. And as I'm looking at this I'm going, wow, what a great way to bring people into lasting health when you take something and you give this out into the world, and then it brings them all back into Sentinel Lasting Health Program. Mm-hmm. It's a tool. So
Richard, I don't want to navigate over to the other side of the mind map right now, but there is a little bubble over there that says app on it. Because I really do see that there's a place for an app here. I don't exactly know what it is, but we're starting to get a sense of it. And it's not like the app replaces the program. The app, we figure out a way for, just like so many people are looking at, using technology to enhance the way in which we go through our lives. Yeah. So I think there's definitely a place for the development of a support, and there may be, I know there's some supports out there that we could employ for the participants in this program. I don't know exactly which ones they are, but we can take a look at those, and then over time look at developing one for lasting health.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So I just want to quickly add to that, and that is with my experience of being on team for 2 years, that I think the app is brilliant. And I think to sort of talk a lot more about what Leni was responding to, it's the thing that really works is to, for instance, on team, was to have a person talk to another person, maybe every day, maybe for 5 minutes, just to say whatever it is they're talking about, their goal for the day, their intention, or maybe, yes, I've just filled out the app and this is what I got today, something that I don't think any technology can replace. And that is having another people go, that's awesome, or you're completely, that actually isn't awesome, and because you forgot about this and you're doing, and what about that? And you know what I mean? There's personal.
The buddy system, the peer system.
Yeah, I think
the mentor system
enhances the app, whatever that app ends up being.
Yeah, that's great, Johnny.
Yeah, and under community, it may not present itself quite so obviously, but under caregiving and care receiving, that holds that piece of the program that we want to develop, where people are supported that way by each other, and not only learning how to give that care, but also how to receive that care from their other colleagues, cohorts, buddies, and so on. The last one on the life flow is understand both health and illness from multiple perspectives, including physiological, emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic, and cultural. I stopped myself after cultural. I could keep going on and list many more perspectives. But I think you get the idea that we tend to hold an aspect of ourselves within, one perspective or maybe two perspectives, but to be able to learn to stretch that out and see, for yourself, Jillian, freedom from weight, from through the lens of the psychological, through the emotional, the physiological, the spiritual, the energetic, and the cultural, and so on. And
yeah, absolutely. I would add in ancestral to that one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that right now so I don't forget.
Wrong one. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's now how do you do that? I mean, I'm just thinking about, so do we like, how do you help people understand that? Do we give them what we think according to a belief system that we have, like, and then are we imposing another, cultural, ancestral something onto people? Like, I think it's brilliant, and I'm very curious.
Yeah, and that's what this process should be leading us to, which is that question about each of these.
Mm.
How then do we deliver on that?
Mm.
Maybe.
But if we decide, sorry, Lean, just a sec, decide that really is important, it resonates with us, it feels right, then we task ourselves with, okay, let's look at how do we do that.
Yeah.
Leanie.
Within the craniosacral therapy modality, there's one aspect, the somatic emotional release work, where you actually do go, for example, you talk with your great-grandmother in order to...
You're cutting out, Leanie. Or is that me? Does everyone else hear?
Yeah, I can hear.
Sorry, that's just me then.
Okay, so where you actually unwind certain traumas or shocks in the body that have been passed on ancestrally over 3 generations to you, and you have no idea why you're feeling a certain way. And so within those treatments, you can unwind really old trauma by having a conversation with the spirits that have passed it on that shock, right? So you can definitely release a lot of emotional obstacles that would perhaps prohibit you from that healing process. So like somatic emotional release work is awesome for that, just as one example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to move on to community. And there are 2 here. Create a strong, enduring, and evolving circle of support. So this speaks to what you were just saying, Jillian. Not only will you have peer and buddy support and built in, so that it's a day by day thing. We will show participants how to bring the strength of that circle together, so there's no gaps, to learn the skills, the interpersonal skills that are necessary, just like, very much like Landmark does, in order to assure that you've got a team with you, that you've got everybody you need to have your back covered, that you know that you are cared for and loved and seen and met.
I think that's essential.
The second one here is learn to skillfully and effectively navigate, negotiate, and communicate within the mainstream medical system, online health, self-help, and self-development worlds, and with health practitioners. This, when you come back, to learn to take the lead in one's own health and well-being, here's another piece of that. Being able to navigate and negotiate and communicate with the people that are supporting you on your team, those ones that might be in the second circle outside of the inner circle of your best friends and buddies and teammates, that kind of thing. But a doctor that you may see, to be able to make that person an effective member of your circle of support, requires communication. And that, for some people, is learning how to not place yourself in a secondary position to the person who you're going to for support, but rather to be able to present to them who you are, what your vision of health is for yourself, and be able to let them know how their support fits into your vision of lasting health for yourself.
That's great. Totally.
So with that one simple example, we've shown how each of these streams would support you to have freedom from weight. Can you feel that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine that a year from now, going through that, you would actually be able to experience what you're sensing is so important to you?
Oh. Yeah, I can actually, because I really can, because of the discussion we've had today and about the creating a narrative for myself and actually thinking it's possible. And but also when you said a year from now, it's like I can imagine that. I could really, because I've done my 40-day challenges here and there about things, and it is really a question of retraining the brain and creating pathways. And I could definitely, and a year is like, wow, I can really see that is a really strong possibility that could be, there'd be freedom. I'd have freedom. And I know that because I've developed over the years certain amounts of freedoms here and there, but I think it goes down to like the underpinnings of it all.
Yeah, and that's what I found, why I liked your using your outcome as an example, because it spoke to, I think everyone else who put down something about weight probably has vast experience as well, but you put it into the words, and it basically said, I've come a long way here, and I now see this as an issue of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, to offer myself up as a comparison, I put, and I mentioned this to you, briefly when we had lunch together 10 days ago or whatever, about me achieving a different weight. My experience with chronic illness one of the symptoms has been a challenge to hold weight on my body, and which is very frustrating culturally, because nobody talks about that. There's nothing in the medical literature about it. There's no studies about it. You're an outlier when you can't hold weight. There's no help for you.
No.
And I look at it differently. I've come to be able to state that for myself, that I want to achieve my ideal weight, which I have a feeling is about 15 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I'm coming at that through a deep understanding of the physiological processes of my body that I've experienced in the face of chronic illness. And I know that if I was able to achieve that marker, it would be a marker of many, many other aspects of my well-being. So the weight actually is secondary. All I know is that if I was there, I would have a lot of other things covered. And I may very well benefit from all the things that we've talked about that relate to you. with this issue. I have no doubt that I would. I'm simply coming at it from a different perspective.
Masterful, John.
Brilliant, John.
Really?
Brilliant.
Yes, my brilliant mind. Yeah. Thank you. So where to from now? What has this brought up for you in terms of the process and in terms of next step for the development?
Well, I think it'd be interesting to test those on different people, the other members of the group, and to actually allow people to like spend some time, read them more carefully, think through if is something missing, if yes, what. And I think it'd be interesting to do some thinking for, I think the first place is to test with the rest of the, well, not test, to give everyone, including the people here and the people not here, time to go through this, do some thinking for, does this address everything, yes or no, and how can we tweak it, because it's definitely a very strong model and a strong starting point. And then once we have that, I think we'll be more clearly able to see the next further step.
I wonder, David, if we could ask those that aren't here and would like to do this, is to watch the recording, and then take their outcomes, and us too, take our outcomes and look at them, map them onto these 5 areas here: mind, body, spirit, life flow, and community. Recognizing that these outcomes here on the right side of each, the list, is only partial, but it gives you a good example of what will be, what other outcomes would be, and certainly to be able to imagine. And map your outcomes onto the content of the program and see if you think you would realize all of your outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's the correct assignment for all of us.
That brought up a thought for me when I was thinking about that. I heard myself say to Marcia, where are you, Marcia? There you are. Last week, every single one of your outcomes will be met by this program. And we both kind of just took that as it is. But then I started thinking, going, really? I'm going to take this because it's Braven. Excuse me for just a second. Hi, Braven. We're on the call right now, on the Lasting Health call. And that's why I took your call, because I just wanted to connect with you and let you know that we'll talk later. Can I call you tomorrow? Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Bye. That was Braven. So what's your response to that comment I made?
The suggestion of what to do next?
No, the suggestion that it actually might be possible that every one of your outcomes and every one of everybody's outcomes would be met by the Lasting Health Program.
You know what came to me is like grizzly bears. They're indicator species, right? If they're healthy, everything else is healthy. And it seems like that this concept you just proposed here is, even so, if you just take one outcome, it reflects, it cascades down to all the other outcomes as well. But like David, I 100% agree. Let's test that. Like, it's just a gut feeling right now, and you know.
So let's see if each of our team, everybody on our team, can look at their outcomes and look at this map and see if they sense how that outcome would be met, or if there's a tweak required, what would be required to make it possible.
I saw one already up on top. Do you mind scrolling up to the body there for me, John, please? Yeah. And so, so we learn how to objectively, accurately observe and assess. We develop the personal, and then that huge dietary component. And you say movement technologies and practices, and so really developing that aspect as well. I think it could deserve a third little more detailed explanation, because that body-mind connection is so important for
over here. You mean another outcome?
Yeah. Like, so that physical feeling of you know, I stick needles into people all the time. They don't even feel, right? That really like the proprioceptive ability to feel the body. Like, I'm a strong believer in that, not just because I was a mountain guide, but it's I see it, that body-mind connection. We are so strong in our head, right? But the chi flow in the body needs to be very, very developed, which the location of Sentinel is already an incredible inspiration, but the movement itself, I think, could deserve another level.
Right. Well, as I said earlier, I've just grabbed a couple, and I would like to continue to add outcomes to each of these fundamentals. So I think, you know, in terms of the next step, that's something that I should focus on, and just see how many I come up with.
Ah, sweet, super, yeah.
And then my thought is like that once we see the extent to which we can create outcomes that we believe are possible as a result of the content that we can imagine presenting, then we can begin to look at how we present that to a participant, through marketing, through how we bring them into the program. What do we tell them? Because we don't want to overwhelm them with a list of 100 outcomes, but we want to say something about what they're getting. And I have a sense that we're going to be able to say something about body that encapsulates enough to satisfy a potential participant looking at this program and asking themselves, will this be of benefit to me? Same with mind, same with spirit. So there's a visioning there, and a focusing in of the language. But I think that's going to work best when we have the extent of it mapped out.
You know, John, if I could speak for just a sec.
Yeah.
What just came to mind for me is like an independent study master's degree at a university. Nicole, my daughter, is a yoga therapist, specializing in trauma, mental illness, and addiction. And she decided like 10 years ago she wanted to get a master's degree in yoga therapy, but there wasn't a place she could go and get that. So she eventually found a university in Boston where she could create her own independent study master's degree within their structure and what they had to offer. And it, in a way, it's the same. So when you say that, when we say we can guarantee that everyone will be able to meet their objectives and have the outcomes they want, they're creating their own program with
in essence they are.
Yeah, with the collaboration of us, an extremely experienced, richly diverse group of teachers, leaders, etc., to structure and guide through the process. And that, to me, that's the beauty of it, is they're creating their own program. So they're going from, and a lot of these things for me anyway, a sense of helplessness and overwhelm to an empowered context. So we might even want to look at some point at some independent study master programs to see, you know, how this is presented to people and how it's structured. So just a thought.
Thank you, Marcia.
I wonder what Andrea or Gerald might have to say about that topic. I'll have to ask them.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Jillian. It's like maybe there's our group, but perhaps there's other people in our lives that can give an independent overview of this the whole process once we've maybe gone through one more stage. Or even now. I mean, that could be highly beneficial because we're in a group, and it probably also needs an outside independent to look at this. That has some knowledge, like Gerald would be one. Ken may be another.
Ken.
Well, Ken's not. So Gerald and Andrea are in our group, honey. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I get where you're going. That would be interesting. We might consider Braven to be one of those because he's not really in the group, and he's your advisor, John.
He's my stratosphere advisor.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so there's that. There's us, and there's others that we are highly skilled in health.
There was also actually Stephen Smith who was here last night.
Stephen Smith would be great. Yeah, he'd be fantastic.
Works for the Ministry of Health, old friend.
So what do we want to be doing in our next conversation? How do I prepare?
Let's first debrief this, right? By sending everyone to take the outcomes, map it on this, come back with some comments, and then the next conversation is either you're requesting everyone to send you their comments, issues prior to the call, and then the call is, what are you doing with all that you received, or everyone shows up on the call and we just let everyone sort of talk through and see where we go with this. But I think that's the critical next step here with the work that's been done.
Well, my first thought on that, David, is to ask for it prior to the call with enough lead time that I can do another synthesis and then present it however that might be. I don't have a clear idea, but I didn't have a clear idea about this on our last call when it was mentioned that we should have outcomes. So
So maybe getting these comments from people, like give people a week or two, and then, well, less than a week maybe.
A week, because that worked well. If we could gather them as soon as possible over this next week, and then begin for me begin kind of Monday, Tuesday of next week, a few days ahead of our call.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I make a suggestion here?
Yes, Stephen.
Would be sort of flipping it, which would be going to what David was saying originally, is we come on the call, we've worked on our stuff, and then we sort of discuss it. Because out of the discussion, some exciting things might come forth, and then send it to you. And then, in other words, so I'm adding in another sort of iteration.
So our next call would be a discussion of responses to this.
Right. So yeah, we'd map it out as both you and David have suggested. So map it out so that we're prepared. We've done our work, but we discuss it. You know, what was easy, what was not easy, what we had. We may even share stuff, what we discovered in the process, and I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. Because even thank you, Jillian, by the way, for allowing yourself to be the guinea pig in this process. But it was really useful to see how you went through it and how David presented it. Not David, as John presented it. So I think it'd be a valuable process. Yeah. Anyways, that's my suggestion.
To piggyback on what Stephen's just saying, to me the most helpful thing about this call, aside from seeing the map here, was, John, for you to lead Jillian through this coaching from her place of not having a clue, except that she just put the objective out there, the outcome out there. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see the next call just maybe doing that with 2 other people who would volunteer to go through that before it was all rehearsed and thought through, and because I found Jillian's responses like, this worked, that doesn't, I don't know what you mean by this, more helpful than just going through with all the what I discovered kind of thing.
Mm.
And in doing that, we would be achieving a deeper sense of how this works, how this generally, as it's beginning to be mapped out, would work for individual participants in the program. Is that?
Well, there are 2 things. One is yes. The other is, for the first time, I'm getting a sense of what the course offerings would be.
Yeah, without us talking about the actual content, you're getting a sense of it.
Yeah, it's starting to come alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me too. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I think it's worth trying if you're willing to, John.
Sure, I'm up for it.
So then the assignment becomes, everyone's got 2 weeks to look into this, trying to map it out. And then on the call, next time we meet, then John goes through a couple of people and working it out with them to create some clarity. And as we do that, we might start then to add and change some things in that model that we have.
Right. And in the meantime, does it make sense that I continue to add outcomes to these 5: body, mind, spirit, life flow, and community? Because I got a whole whack more.
I don't think we could stop you if we tried.
That could be true.
Add them all. They're incredible.
Yeah.
I agree. You should add them, just because I think the profound part are the 5 main subjects, and then the rest are just details that are filled in, which, it would be great. Just add all those details in. But I hear we're prototyping. We are graduates from kindergarten right now, which is exactly where we want to be, right?
Yeah, and also what I see as you add those, John, I think that's a great idea. And then the interaction with Jillian and with those two more people next time, it's like, we're the examples.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the outcomes and you got examples, and so we see it in real time. And as Marcia was saying, that inspires me to think, oh, okay, here's where my work could plug in. I could do this thing right here, it would plug in here. So that's gotten me excited.
Okay.
Yeah.
And John, you could look through the outcomes that you've received, and maybe there are a couple of people who have outcomes that a lot of other people have, like with this weight diet thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So another couple
yeah.
of examples like that cross from participant to participant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to know, John, before we leave, is that you received all the outcomes, and was there quite a bit of crossover in the response that you got?
How do you mean, Richard?
I mean, in the sense of, well, you got weight, for instance. Were there 5 out of 10 that mentioned weight?
There were four that mentioned weight.
Okay.
4 people mentioned weight. Yes, I haven't done. I haven't looked too closely beyond that. The broader concept that I mentioned, that the body, mind, and spirit. So in that sense, some people are weighted away from spirit. No mention of it at all. It's more towards body. Some are more towards mind. But I haven't looked for those ones that are common. That would be a good next step.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see, out of a group of 10 people, what's weighted and what's not weighted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
So just get out your SPSS and do a statistical analysis, John.
Yeah, I wonder, how do you do that stuff? We need a statistician or something.
We finally found something you can't do, John. Yay. So
I could do that.
That's what teamwork is all about. Yes. Thank you, David.
Oh, David, of course. Well, why don't we take a look at that? Would you be able to have the time, David, for us to look at the list? We may not do this, but it would be interesting what could be done with it.
Yeah, if you send me the data, I could have a look.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That would be fantastic, because then we can track. That's the area that's trackable then.
Yeah.
And therefore marketable, right, Richard?
Yeah, exactly. So when we get that, then we say, oh, okay, great. And also it could, in the future, could lean towards like, okay, how do we approach individuals? Okay, this one's leaning towards weight and body image, or this one's leaning towards spiritual and connectivity to self. So the conversation would lead in a different way then.
Mm-hmm.
So what approach would a practitioner take with one that's, spiritually inclined and one that's body image inclined?
I think that's slightly different, but I think we can get that at some point, yeah.
Yeah, and also there's also a solution in the question too. If somebody is really heavily sort of into the rational, if you will, well, maybe getting into them through their body might be
yeah, that's a really good point, Stephen. We have to look at what actually is the leverage point, and that would be determined in a coaching conversation. You would, within the realm of the beginning of the program in the intake.
Right, and that co-creating.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Hey, John, is next meeting the last meeting, or will there be another meeting?
It is.
That? Or
well, there is going to be, I'm sure, but it's all that we've figured out.
Right.
So that's going to have to be a part of the next meeting as well, that we determine what is the next step.
Okay.
forward that we're going to commit to. We know generally that we want to create a day for bringing a larger group of people together. We need to decide, is that indeed what we want to do? Is that the next step of what would we have to do in order to be ready for that day? Or do we want to have some of the smaller groups working on some of the pieces, which is where we were going last conversation. And then we realized, well, we've got to have a better handle on outcomes to inform the way in which we think of the development of these pieces. And it seems that I'm guessing that at the end of the next conversation, we would have the outcomes solid enough that we would be able to then turn our attention to using them to take that next step of looking at, okay, well, how do we approach intake and evaluation then? How do we intake and evaluation for one example?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do we?
Beautiful. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, totally. Sweet.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great meeting. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.